Hello, YouTube modeling community. This is Rusty Rotor with a Mental Monday on a Tuesday. I got really tied up yesterday. I didn't have time to get the video made or out. I'm back to like making the video, uploading it day per day, where usually I have 2 or 3 videos in my queue. I just need to edit them, or I have some of them already edited, just ready to post. But today's Mental Monday. I'll start off by saying these are just my opinions. My opinions don't mean shit. Okay? This is how I perceive things and how I view things. And this topic is a very touchy topic to a lot of people, apparently. And I know this because I got in on a live last week or over the weekend, one of the two. And it's not anybody was really spouting off or being derogatory or negative too much about it. But I got to hear a lot of different opinions via in the chat feed and the 5-6 people that were on talking, back and forth and discussing it. And it kind of like, it was an aha moment for me because it's like, I've always thought about that. And I've asked your guys' opinion on different aspects of it. And we've talked about it via a Mental Monday. But now it's more kind of, it's the new big dog in the ring. And I think there's some fear behind it, the way I perceive it. I think it's a fear of change. It's an uncertainty of kind of what it all is and, why is it and all that stuff. So the topic is show related. Show related only. It has nothing to do with what you build to put on your shelves, what you may do in a commission build, or if you're just an average Joe, you build and you show your model on, what's the word? A social media platform. However you present your model. This is just related to shows. And there's one lady, I gotta say that first of all, out of the 5 or 6, there was one lady. And getting to know their opinions and how they feel about it when it's related to a show is kind of really cool because it illustrates my thinking on it. And like I said in the beginning, it doesn't mean that I'm right and this is set in stone. It has to be this way. And this is what it's going to do. If you're asking Rescue Rotor, why do you got stripes on your face? Remember, guys, I sleep with a CPAP machine, and I just changed the nose cone on it, and they're tight for the first couple weeks until it kind of breaks in, and then I don't get it. So now I got for Halloween, I could go as black all this in, paint it in. I could be a masked blunter. Off topic. Anywho's. Get stuff out of the way here. The topic is 3D printing. And you may say, Rick, you've covered 3D printing. Yeah, we have, pretty much in all aspects. Other than kind of this way. And this is really relevant in today, and from today moving on. And since it originally hit the scene. I said it once. I don't 100% stand behind it, but 3D printing is going to be the wave of the future. I mean, you got to think about it in the aspect of we buy a plastic model kit, right? When 3D printing first came out, you were getting goofy little toys, gadgets, just different things. And then as it evolved, it did evolve right in front of our eyes, right underneath our noses. It evolved into somebody that was in the modeling world said, hey, I can make parts. All these cool parts that everybody's always wanting, but they're not around anywhere. There's no models that have it. So guys that are good with CAD work, designing, could design things and print them out and make parts available. And yeah, if you're looking at trying to make money, you're kind of cornering the market. And then it flooded the market, and we're all set back. Well, everybody's 3D printing, and it doesn't matter. It's people like Joel, Tex 3D, and a slew of others, Ryan Jones. If you can evolve out of that and not get swallowed up in it, and keep a great product coming out new and fresh all the time, you're going to be, the kings of the mountain. And those guys have, and there's a lot of others too. That's just a name, a couple right off the top of my head. And by the way, Tex 3D, guys, he's on YouTube. He's on Instagram. I believe he's on Facebook too. The guy produces a lot of 3D parts, kits, some that are his, some are, other people's that he's redone or whatever. Go check his website out. He's got a lot of great things, and his prices are super reasonable if you're looking for 3D printed parts. And he's got a lot of options, guys. He's got trans kits, wide body kits, tires and wheels, engines, all that crazy stuff like everybody else. But he's in the continental United States. All right, guys, sorry about that. My daughter had to get some gloves. She's got a painting project she's doing out there. And she didn't want to be on film. So, Texas 3D printing. I've talked to him. I'm trying to kind of collaborate with him, promote his product, much in the way I do MGSF and Ryan Jones. Nothing financial gaining, but to help him. Because I truly like his products. I've watched him grow and try to keep stuff fresh and new, get opinions. So I can respect that. But out of all these guys that 3D print, including myself, and I say, well, the realm, we've gone from being crazy little gadgets that was 3D printed that kind of wowed everybody. They all had to run out and get their first filament printer. And then it evolved over a couple years into resin 3D printing. That has evolved so much in the past, let's say 3 to 5 years. Now the home units that you can get for under $2,000 are what the commercial units were back then. And these things are huge. They're not huge. They're about twice as big as the unit I have. And the build tables, you can do a lot more on them. They're more crisp and clean, better detail, better variations in how you set your settings and all that stuff. But, it's just like everything else. A new model comes out every year or whatever to keep up with the market. Because if they made a perfect one, nobody'd buy another one, and that company would be out of business. So, probably the reason why mine ain't working. Anyways. When you go to a show, there's categories. There's like street machine, street freak. There's all kinds of variations. Commercial grade trucks, slammed, pro mod, your pro streets would fit in there, your pro touring, there's youth, blah, blah. So what's happening is a lot of guys are capitalizing at shows because their builds have a lot of 3D, if it's not all 3D printed, in it. I mean, think about it. The detail is there. It looks so real that you don't get that so much in scratch building or out of kits. So, like, that console, that's pretty cool. I mean, to us average Joe, that's a really cool looking console. But somebody could CAD design that and add every bit of detail that the real one has into a little tiny piece of plastic. So is it fair? I believe it is, because resin is a type of plastic. It's just a hunk of plastic, and it's what you make of it that makes it what it is. There's aspects to this. People that can't afford a printer or can't afford the 3D printed parts. I totally get that. But in the world of surviving, you do what you can do to achieve that look within your own realm. You know what I'm saying? If you can't buy 3D printed parts, then start getting real good at scratch building. Start getting real good at searching out other kits that's got parts that you need to add that touch of realism, painting, so on and so forth. Balling on a budget. Save your pennies. Buy those pieces for that build. You may not be able to do that to every build, but maybe every once in a while you can do a build. So I get that part of it. So is it unfair? No, it's not fair, because everything in the world is not fair. Because I can afford to buy 3D printed parts, and I could buy the file to print this out and print a zillion of them and sell them. I make a little money. The guy that owns the file makes a little money. That type of thing. You got to think to yourself, if you got the knowledge to be able to do it, and you're trying to supplement your hobby like I do, 3D printing is a great thing to get into. It may take you a year or two to save up your money to get a printer, but the money you can make off that will pay for the materials you use, pay for your hobby, and then you're not worried about so much what you can and can't afford for your hobby. So there's pros and cons to both sides of it. But it comes down to the show. So is that fair to a guy that spent maybe, let's say, 1,000 hours, and he's got a custom, and it's got tons of 3D printed parts on it, and it's sitting on a table with guys that spent thousands of hours, like I just said, putting scratch built into it, detail painting. And then there's the guy that bought all the aftermarket parts, like the photo etch and plug wires and all that other stuff that's a separate category other than 3D printing. So is it fair that 3D printed item gets to sit on the table with the other ones? I think it is, because it's just another aftermarket part. It didn't come in the kit. It's something you bought aftermarket. Same way when you have a real car and you buy a set of tires and wheels that aren't from the factory. Those are aftermarket tires and wheels. Valve covers, whatever you do to your hot rod or your car, that would be aftermarket. Unless you got an all original Ford Taurus and you've gone to the Ford dealer and bought every single little part, then it's OEM correct. But that's a choice. It's not a mandatory thing. You have an option as the car owner to save money, which is buy an aftermarket part that's cheaper, that may perform or outperform the manufacturer's part. It's a crapshoot. We all know that. In the modeling world, and at shows, people are kind of rallying, trying to get a separate category. That way, it determines the amount of 3D printed parts that are on your build, will determine what class it'll be in. So like for example, the EV charger that Joel from Iceman Collection sent us. That is a full 3D printed kit. Now you can add aftermarket parts to it and totally, bling it out. Cut the hood open, have an engine in it, so on and so forth. But if you built it right out of the box, to me, it's a box stock build. It's what came in the box. It's not a trans kit. It's not, anything else. It's a full-blown kit in a box. That should go in a box stock category. I don't care if it's 3D printed or not. There's resin bodies. Guys put those on the table all the time. There's not a category for resin. Resin only. There's not that. There's not. Those don't exist. All the resin parts. People cast resin all the time. Lucas C. makes tons of parts out of casting resin. And a lot of that stuff's super highly detailed, period correct, and nobody bitches or complains. Now, why are we doing it about 3D printed? There's no really just reason to do it. It's plastic. It's just a different form of plastic. It's an accessibility to you as a modeler to use or not to use. If you're just disgusted by it all and you don't like it, well, you're just not up to things changing and becoming new. Kind of like, getting with the program. You either sink or you swim. Well, people that eat up this 3D printing, they're swimming because it's not the same as what we are used to having, whether it being resin casted or what comes in a kit or what somebody can scratch build. My hat goes off to guys that just scratch build and make it look so real it isn't. You can't tell the difference. I have nothing negative to say about any of it. Even 3D printing. Take aside that I have a 3D printer, and then I was 3D printing pretty regularly up till the debacle. I wasn't hating on that because it was something new. It's like, holy crap, look at the detail in that. You look at Ryan Jones wheels. Now, yes, these in the modeling world exist, and they're probably just as good if you stripped them down, got them down to clear plastic so you could get rid of the kit chrome. Be just as good, but these are crisp and clean. All I got to do is prep these and paint them. I don't have to strip them down, then wash them. I got to wash these. So, similar step. Light sanding, similar step. Prime them, similar step. Paint them or rechrome them, similar step. The only difference is I don't have to wait to strip the chrome. So I saved a step. And I get the same detail, if not better, than what's in the kit. So why should I be penalized and my model can't sit on that table? So, truthfully, if you want to be fair, then the resin has to get off that table too. We as a hobby, guys, we got to stand together and be united and open-minded, I should say, to change. And the way society and the world is working, we have to be prepared or prepare ourselves mentally, financially, and everything else for our hobby to evolve. And it is evolving. More and more every day, more and more 3D printed kits are coming out. Joel at Iceman Collections is constantly working on new kits. Complete kits you get in a box. That's a box stock build. You buy a resin body from Jimmy Flintstones, and good God, the work you got to do to that thing to get it looking right. And you put it together with the kit that it recommends to use. Well, you just use a trans kit, but yet you can set that on the same table? Come on, guys. That's not right. That's not cool. You're bashing and getting upset about something that you can't afford, which I understand that completely. But there's a way to do that. Even guys that are on the tightest budgets in the world, if you buy, on average, let's say a kit a month, maybe you only buy 4 kits a year. I don't know what your budget is. But don't buy one less than you normally do. Then that gives you the $20 or $30 to buy some 3D printed parts for 1 year builds. You gotta give to get. No matter what you do in this world, you gotta give to get. Trade a kit that you got to somebody that 3D prints. You can, there's ways of getting 3D printed parts, guys, than just saying, hey, I can't afford it, let alone afford the printer. I get not affording the printer. That's hundreds of dollars. Or if you buy the newfangled one, over $1,000. It's like $1,200, $1,300 on sale. But it opens a world to us as modelers for that detail. It doesn't mean that my model can't sit on the table because it has 3D printed parts on it, or should it create its own category? Well, I'm not against creating its own category and limiting the amount of 3D parts you can have before it would be considered it has to be on that table. That's fine. I'm 100% behind that. That's why I said with these guys and gal, not calling anybody out, I agree with most of everything they said. Some of it I don't, and that's my right to do so. And it's their right to do so as well. But you can't be all up in uproars about 3D printed stuff if you're not going to get in the uproars about resin casting. So if there's going to be a category for 3D printed parts, there should be a category for resin. So if your tires and wheels and your body and let's say your interior tub is all 3D or resin casted, and you're just using the kit suspension and the engine from the kit, guess what, guys? That has to go into a resin category. It shouldn't sit on the table with the guy that scratch built 95% of his stuff for his kit, or built it box stock, what have you. But see, then look at it. There's fully 3D printed kits. There's full resin kits. So now the categories that you were an uproar about that needs to be happening at every show now has to have subcategories. Well, you got a box stock for resin, a box stock for 3D printed, custom 3D printed, full 3D printed. Now you're just creating a lot of other categories that really a lot of guys don't do 3D printing, so there may be 2 or 3 models in that category. And they're going to be happy because if theirs is better, they're only competing against 3 people. They're going to take home a trophy and a reward. That's a good thing on that aspect of it too. But realize what you're asking for. There is kind of like karma. It's going to come back and bite you in the ass. Either get with the program or don't worry about it. They're mass producing 3D printed cars. Your beloved AMT, Revell, and Monogram, and all these other places. Guess what they use now when they do that? They get the CAD work from Ford, Chevy, whoever, and then they scale it down 1/24th, 1/25th, and they print that model kit. It's the tester. They print it out in 3D scale things. Then they make the form or the mold to put out the model. Because you wonder why, like the new Ford Bronco looks so good and so detailed, and holy crap, this looks really nice, and we haven't seen anything like this in a long time. That's because it was all 3D printed. It was designed, CAD designed, from Ford's files. That detail was there when they made the molds off the 3D parts. Because it's faster to resin inject plastic and put out a kit form this way than it is 3D printing right now. That took like an hour. I could print off, I think, 200 and something of these on my print table. Or it took, maybe it was 2 hours. 3D printers are going to catch up to what injection molding does when it makes these things. And they won't have the expense of repairing the mold, cleaning the mold out, downtime in a factory and employees standing around doing nothing, and a loss of money. 3D printers, you can run, let's say you invest your money and you buy 15 printers, and you buy, let's say, four wash stations. If you took that initial investment, the amount of money you would be making would be equivalent to you making probably $45,000 a year, because the amount of parts you can mass produce and sell to the public is crazy. And the prices are only going to go up. I mean, it's the way the world goes. Everything gets more expensive. Model kits get more expensive. 3D printing is going to get more expensive. The more detailed, the better designs. These guys are 3D printing cars that we have not seen in the modeling world in 40, 50 years. Like the Mavericks, from the Johan Mavericks, all the different Mavericks. Joel's working on one. You can buy the kit on Colts 3D and print as many of them off as you want. And all you got to do is find somebody that makes the decals, and you can replicate that Johan kit out the ass. So, do you want to have the availability of things that you didn't have? And be proud of it and set it on the table and know that you're just as much risk as the guy that 100% scratch built everything, of him beating you? Or start creating a bunch of categories that's going to create subcategories, that's going to create a lot of crap that's not needed. We accepted the resin casting because it was a new way to mass produce parts that you'd have to buy another kit to get the part that you liked so well, or the shifters or tires and wheels, whatever it may be. 3D printing will outdo resin casting. Yeah, I said it. And it's because it's more efficient. Smell and messiness is probably about the same. But, you got to make a mold with however many parts in it and pour that and wait for it to cure, and then take them out and then redo it. Wait for them to cure, take them out. Where I can print them out in, 8-hour day. I can run the machine just constantly printing these out. And I've got thousands of them. Now, if you want a resin cast on that, though, yeah, they could probably be competitive, but you got to make the mold. You got to have the parts first. You got to make the mold. The mold's got to be right, and the mold's got to produce in order to be successful. Any given time a mold could get a defect in it, and then you start, all the time you wasted in pouring it is going to have a defect in it, and then it's not going to be sellable. 3D printing is really not any different, guys. I print stuff all the time that'll have a defect in it. It's just depending on if it's a defect that makes it not worthy. I use it in my own stock, or it's sellable. That you have to determine that for yourself. But we can't, as hobbyists and modelers, sit there and say, well, you shouldn't be able to put it in the same class because, I could only build this way. There's a saying, too bad, so sad. This world isn't all, everybody gets a trophy. I hate that bullshit. I hate that logic. It teaches everybody, you ain't got to do nothing to win. Just participate. And participation doesn't mean just sit there with your thumb up your ass and, at the end of the time, you're going to get a plaque or a trophy because you signed up and you participated. You paid your fee. Competition is competition. There's winners and there's losers. That's how the world is. Winners and losers. Accept it, because that's just the way it is. That's not my knowledge. That's what I've learned from the era I grew up in. Nowadays, no. It's everybody gets a trophy. Here's a room. Go cry in it. You don't have. If little Jimmy in my time and era was crying, teacher would ask him what's wrong. She would take him out in the hall, maybe take him to a counselor to talk to him, work through it. Now it's just, okay, well, if you want to cry, here's a room, go cry in the room. That's kind of the same thing on 3D printing. It's just another aspect, guys. It's just another level of detail we can use in our hobby to get that wow looking model. It doesn't mean it needs to change categories it shows. It just means you better know that if you're going to use 3D printed parts, you better use them in the right, proper way. They better be nice, crisp, and clean, because the judges are going to be looking for it. You know, oh, that's a 3D printed part. Look, he didn't even sand the grooves out of it. He didn't sand the layers out of it. It's just put in there and painted. They're just going to get more picky about things they see that they know is 3D printed. I mean, you can look at certain things and know that it's 3D printed because there's nothing in the world that has that kind of detail to it that you can get in the aftermarket world, or as we know as the aftermarket world, or within a kit. But that's going to change, guys. AMT and Revell and Monogram, they all want to keep striving for generations to come and make that money. And the only way they can do it is to get with the program. 3D printing is the realm. They're hiring CAD designers and technicians that sit on a computer all day long and pump out from OEM specs, taking the 1:1 and shrinking it down to a 1/24 or 1/25 scale, or whatever scale they want to make it in. And they make a file, and then they'll send it to their 3D printing department, which will upload it into the machine, and they'll print it out. Somebody will assemble it, and then another one will be printed, and they'll take all those parts. So if the assembled one goes through and is approved, they all give the thumbs up. Let's do it. It looks great. I love the detail. They'll take the second print, all those little parts, then they start making the molds. It goes to an engraving department that'll make the molds, and then they'll inject the styrene plastic into those molds. Well, they're doing 2 steps right now. A lot of extra money being spent. So if they can cut out all this part, what do you think they're going to do? Well, now we can just fill a factory with thousands of 3D printers and a quarter of the staff to run it. So when it's done printing, everything for the full kit is on one build plate. It's not an assembly line of all this one machine that's printing just this tree. So this day we're doing the Mustang. All these trees are going down the line, and they're putting it into a box, and then the packager is taking this and taking the other sprues that were printed and injected, molded, and putting them in a box, and a set of instructions and a set of decals. It's a lot of money going out. Right now it's in the design phase. How can we produce the next model kit, a new model kit that's not been on the market, and make it really marketable? And that's the detail that everybody keeps screaming about all the time. I want to see more detail. I wish somebody made this. I wish somebody made that. Guys are doing it, and now not everybody, but a lot of people are complaining about it. Quit complaining. Accept it. Deal with it. You don't want to use it. That's your prerogative and your choice. But don't lay around belly aching about it that it's not fair on the table. It is fair. To me, again, my feelings, and everybody's entitled to them. And I can agree with almost anybody. Certain parts of what they're saying, I can understand that and get that, and well, yeah, that would be just cause. That I get it. So all I'm saying is, let's make it even more radical. Let's take it a step further. If we're going to bitch about 3D printed cars, or cars with 3D printed parts on them on the table at shows, and we're going to start making them make their own category for it. Think about it, guys. That is actually going to evolve into the whole show. Because people could really, if you want to think about it, start making money off shows. Hey, bring your 3D printed model. This is a 3D printed show. Only 3D printed models allowed. Well, would you like that? It's a model show. You want to be able to go there. But you don't 3D print. You don't buy 3D printed parts. You don't use 3D printed parts. So it excludes you from something. So why should we exclude those guys from our shows? Shows in general, every show. Because their car has 3D printed parts, or it's a full 3D printed kit. It is no different. These words, I say with 100% certainty. At the bottom level line, guys, 3D printed parts or a kit is no different than a full resin casted build. Even if it's a half resin and photo etch parts and then kit parts, No, you just Frankenstein the shit out of something. It's got a mass variety. Pretty much how I build. It's mine. They're all Frankensteins. They got parts from everywhere and everything. Aftermarket, 3D printed, resin casted, scratch built. I got a slew of everything in every build I do. I don't complain about it. I accept it. I'm like, holy crap, this is cool. Look at these details. Well, okay, I can't afford that. Well, that sucks. How can I want to get those parts. What can I do to get those parts? Well, I save my money, every penny. I stop buying kits. I may not build for 2 or 3 months, which will suck. And so I don't have to buy extra glue and paints and all the other stuff. And I take my money and I invest it in a 3D printer. Or the stuff you need to resin cast. Whatever it may be. Then you can start making your own stuff. Now you got access to it. And guys, these are getting cheaper and cheaper every day. This machine I got cost me almost $600. With tax and everything, was $600. Nowadays, I can buy the same exact machine for under $200. And my machine is probably 2 to 3 years old. It's sat in a warehouse probably for a year. Sat in Amazon's shelf for a year. I had it set for almost a year before I even opened it up and tried to use it. And then so about 4 years old. But that same machine is under $200. You can't tell me as a modeler that so you don't buy 4 kits a month, whatever your finances are and your budget is. I don't know. I know some guys that buy 20 or 30 kits a month. And they don't use aftermarket parts. They just build the shit out of kits. And that's great. But if you're one of those guys and you want to complain about 3D printing, well, don't buy kits for a while. Sit tight, work on what you have, save your money, go buy you a 3D printer. Learn how to use it, start making your own parts. Then you have that. And then you can't be a naysayer about 3D printed parts. Now, some of these guys we're discussing all have used 3D printed parts. Some of them haven't. And that's why I said I like that objective view of people that haven't and their feelings on it, people that have used it, and their views and opinions on it. Well, this is just mine. But at the end of the day, I can't foresee starting a whole new category, because if you do, you got to open one for resin. That resin body did not come in that kit. Those resin tires and wheels that you casted did not come in that kit. If yours is a full-blown custom build and you've got a mix of everything on it, that build should be able to sit on the table in the custom category, and you take your chances. You're going to win on this. Just because it has some higher detail parts does not mean you're going to beat the guy out that spent 1,000 hours scratch building and making all those little tiny pieces instead of just reproducing them. He's probably going to win still, because the judges have got the eyes. They can see, hey, this shit didn't come in this kit. Hey, this is an aftermarket part you can just buy. This dude made this. And those little things we lay on the tables that tells description of what we used, the products we used, and how we did it, and what that's reassurance to the judge, knowing. Same way with a box stock build. You got to show your instructions, and sometimes the original box that came in, for them to review and make sure that all that is out of the box. It's just the times are changing, guys, and you either get with it or you just get left behind. And there's nothing wrong with being left behind, because buy a kit, build it exactly the way you want it. It's yours to do that. But don't really be real negative to something that's new to the hobby, or newer, that is actually, it's going to take over our hobby. Eventually it will. When these machines, like the commercial grade machines, can probably print off 4 to 6 full model kits at one swipe. So if you are, even though this machine is probably pumping out 30 or 40 a minute, whatever how speeds they run those side L's at, that these plates. I know when I worked at a injection molding company, those side L's spun, I don't know how many, like 20 or 30, 40 revolutions per minute. That's super fast. And each time those things are opening and then they close, when they close, they inject that plastic down into it. And then as it gets around, it pops open and the part comes down a conveyor belt, and then there's fans blowing on it to cool it down. By the time it gets down to the end, the person standing at the end of the table takes that and they'll put it in a big box. When that box is full, they ship it to the assembly area, which is when you put it in a box. They know what parts are supposed to be in that box, and they gather all the parts and they pack it in your box nice and neat. And then they send it through a lamp thing that wraps it in plastic, and then they get stacked up inside other boxes and they get shipped out to all of us. 3D printed models aren't going to be any different, guys. It's the wave of the future, whether we like it or not. We can open categories in model shows. I'm not saying you can't. But you also, if you're going to do that for 3D printing, you better do it for resin. Because then you're going to have people sitting back bitching that, well, I do all this resin casting and all these highly crisp detailed parts and, blah, blah, blah. Then you need another category for resin. This is resin. So that's resin. So technically that should be resin casted and 3D printed. If you're going to make a category, they both should be in that category. If this thing has more than, let's say, 4 parts that are resin or 3D printed on it, it would have to go in there. There's got to be rules set and determinations of how much of what you can have before it is considered to be in that category. Second part of this topic is when your models are shown, you put them on a table and you put them in a certain place. Do you think it's fair that somebody comes along and either bitches about or picks your model up and moves it to the category they think it should be in? And that would be like a club member that's hosting the show. If you set yours, let's say if I set this in, I'll give you two ways of this. So let's say they have a Pro Street category. And then they have their Pro Mod and Pro Stock and, Nitro Funny cars, all that, those would all be in that category. There's too many different cars, guys, to have that many categories at a mall show. These guys are simplifying it to make it more easier to maintain, or it becomes too much work to try and do, and it's not worth their time or effort. This is a Pro Street. So if I set this in the Pro Mod category, because technically it kind of is. Do I bitch because somebody picked my model up and put it into the Pro Street because it had treaded tires? Yeah, I'm going to bitch. Don't touch my freaking model. Don't breathe on it. Don't touch it. You got a problem with it, you come find me at the show. Especially if you're another model club hosting a show. You have enough respect for me that I don't touch your stuff. Don't be touching mine. I go through the efforts of putting mirrors underneath mine so you can see underneath them. And if I don't, that's on me as the builder when I present my model. But because you don't think it should be in this category, you pick it up and you move it to the category you think it should be in, you better not catch me. You better not let me catch you doing it. Because I'm going to get ejected from the show because I'm going to whip your ass. Plain and simple. No ifs, ands, or buts. You pick up one of my models. Because at that point, you touch it and you pick it up. And if you drop it, you just ruined however many hours worth of work I have into it. That I'm never getting back. And now I got a busted ass model. Thanks to somebody that thinks that they're cute and doesn't think it belongs in this category. You better come find me, talk to me about it, and see what my philosophy is on it and why I set it where it is before you go picking something up and moving it. Because I've had it happen at one show, and I went up to the president of the show. I said, you better be glad that I don't know who did it. I said, but if you touch another one of my models or one of my builds and you move it to someplace you think it's better suiting because somebody was complaining, there's going to be hell to pay. And, luckily somebody had already communicated with me a little bit. And I was like, I didn't put it in that category for a reason because mine was more detailed than everybody else's. And there was a lot of great builds on the table. I didn't want them to have to compete against mine. I put mine into a category that was basically the same, where there's more detailed models, so it was fair. That's why I did it. So if you want to move it, you need to come find me. Don't touch it. Don't move it. Don't breathe on it. Don't scoot it around. Don't scoot it over to make room for something else. Come find me. Say, hey, I need to put this on that table, and yours is kind of, I just don't want to touch your build. Will you please scoot it over just a little bit so I can fit mine on the table? Absolutely. No problems. Why can't I leave mine on that category? Well, it's more this category than it is when you have it in, and we feel that it would do better if it was in the category it's supposed to be in. Well, then let me make that decision. Because if not, then you need somebody at the table when you come in that looks at your model and say, okay, well, that one needs to go in the pro street. This one, then you got somebody dictating where your model goes. Where's it end, guys? I totally stand behind everybody that gets totally ticked and pissed off about somebody touching their build. It's because the hours we spent on these guys, take the money equation out of it, that time we spent, and it only takes one little, oh, and then drop it, and then it's shattered into pieces. So now, well, this happens before the judging happens. Well, now, mine can't be just because you just destroyed it. So now, is that fair? Or is it fair? I feel it would have won, so give me the trophy. What do you do about that? Well, no, everybody's a big loser. You're a loser because they dropped your model, so it can't compete because it's busted into a million pieces and you can't repair it right there and then. And the company is a big loser because they had a terrific looking build and they didn't need to touch it. They could have just come up and talked to somebody and said, hey, we need to move your model. It's better suited in this category. And then communicate with you and see why you put it where you put it. And are you okay with it being moved to this category? Please come move it to that category. Communication is key, guys. We can't, just assume this and assume that. We got to, be mindful of what guys and gals put into these things to take to a show. You can't just be inconsiderate and pick somebody's stuff up and move it without talking to them first. Now, here's another little spot of this. This is still the second topic. Let's say you go to shows, you set your models up, and then you leave for a while and you come back right before your awards. And they had this issue that your model needed to be moved. And in this case, let's say they didn't move it, but they were waiting to get a hold of you to try to do it. But they couldn't find you. Is it okay to move your model then? Hell no. Don't touch it. Most of those things, if you want to make it simple, when they fill out a sheet and turn it into you, have their phone number put on there. Make that mandatory. That way, if you leave the show, they can call you and say, hey, we got an issue. Yours is in a category. We think it needs to be moved to this category. Do we have your permission to move it? Or can you come back and move the model to the other category before the judging happens? It's communication. Taking the steps that everything is kind of fair and equal across the table. It doesn't happen a lot, guys. I've seen it happen a few times. It's happened to me once. And they did move mine really without me giving the okay. I gave okay for one of them. I didn't give the okay for the other one to be moved, but they moved both of them. I wasn't happy with that. You're sparking a situation that can lead to a fist fight and all out just ruining the show. A situation by doing that. You don't want to travel down those roads. 3D printing, like I said, if you're going to open a class just for itself, I'd be willing to do that. But you got to open the category to other avenues because now there's full kits coming out 3D printed, and that would be a box stock that didn't use any other parts, just what came with it. That's a box stock 3D printed build. So there's going to be subcategories. How do you force all that on a model club that hosts these shows and demand that? You can't. They simplify everything, guys. They simplify everything for a reason, because they've already grown to such an extent they need so many people to help, get the show set up, run the show, take care of stuff during the show. They can't keep adding more and more categories. Now, I complain all the time they should have a category for the way I build, pro touring. Well, no, they're not going to open a special category because of maybe 15 people in the world that build pro touring. You got to put yours in with the pro mods, the pro stocks, the pro streets. Anything with the word pro in it, that's where yours goes. And just hope for the best. Pro mods are way more detailed than pro touring. A little more cool factor, I think, in the pro touring than this is pro street. But then again, I overpower the pro street because of all the detail. So, it balances out. For everything that I may kind of overpower, there's still 2 or 3 guys that overpower me. So it's a good mix. You got a 50-50 shot. We start adding categories for just 3D printed, or X amount of 3D printed parts qualifies you to go into a 3D printed category. No, we got to do it for resin too, because it's 3D printed resin and it's resin casted. Open one category, and everything that, if you put a Jimmy Flintstone body on your build, you better have it in that category. You know how they're going to know? Because the minute they pick it up and they feel that weight, they're going to know it's a resin casted body, whether it's Jimmy Flintstone or whoever makes them. You guys are all excited about these resin casted bodies because it's of things that, like a Johan kit, a certain thing, you can't get it anymore. The molds don't exist, so they can't reproduce it. So it's gone forever. And the price of the kit, if people got them, are $200 to $1,000. Nobody wants to pay that for a model kit. And then the fact of building it, and you're like, I spent $1,000 on this model, and now I got to build it, and I got to spend another $1,000 in parts. I got a $2,000 model when I'm said and done that ain't worth nothing but its weight, really. I mean, they're priceless to us, but you know what I'm saying. It's the fact of the resin needs to be in the same category as 3D printed if you're going to go that route and push for that to happen. So be mindful of what you're asking for. Because where I would stand united with you on one thing, mean you're going to be at odds on another. And the same way with a lot of other people in the world. Oh, not my beloved resin casted Jimmy Flintstone body that I've been using for 30 years. Well, 3D printing is here to stay, guys. It's not going anywhere. And it's going to take over your resin casting. It just is. And it's going to be better quality. From the guys that, professionally do this. That's us little individuals, maybe not, but the production, the cost effectiveness is going to be cheaper in 3D printing than it is in resin casting. I can outproduce you in a day on a 3D printer as what you resin cast. And unless you got a huge operation, you got 100,000 different molds, and you spend 4 hours in that day going around filling all those molds, and then the next day you just repeat the process, and you may produce, let's say, 20 Jimmy Flintstone bodies. And the price of that body, of course, yeah, that's good money. But come on, guys, it's just another phase, another level of options that we have. We don't need to bitch or complain about it. If you don't want to accept it, that's totally up to you. I'm not telling you have to. But understand something. It is change. It's going to happen whether you want it to or not. And if we push as hobbyists at shows for fairness, that resin or 3D printed builds or cars that got 3D printed parts on it should be in their own category, they shouldn't be on. You're looking down upon it. You're shunning it. Well, you better start shunning the resin then, because it's no different. It's just a different process. This machine's dipping down in a vat of resin, and it's curing at each layer, where you pour it in a mold and it cures, over 8 hours or whatever it is, 12 hours. It's not different It's just a different process. It's the same shit, different process. So be prepared. Somebody's going to watch and say, well, hell, if that's the case, we're going to put category in here for 3D printed or 3D printed parts and subcategories of this. We got to include the resin. So now it just takes your build that you spent all year long building that's got a Jimmy Flintstone body on it and all these aftermarket parts. You're looking so forward to getting to Acme or N&L North or East, West, whatever it is, and putting that on that table. Well, guess what? Now it's going into a different category altogether. You're going against a 100% 3D printed kit that is going to be so much more detailed and look more realistic than you're going to get with a resin casted part. Now you'll be like, fuck, that ain't fair. That ain't fair. No, it's not. But if you do for one, you gotta do for all. True? Is that the truth? I mean, if you only want styrene kits, whether you kit bash, you're using, Frankensteining just from model kits, plastic styrene, no 3D printed parts. You allow the aftermarket parts, the photo etch and the decals and, whatever else. Really, you're creating the window of opportunity for all subcategories to be created. So the only thing truthfully will be is either a true box stock or 100% styrene only kit. That means every little part on styrene is plastic. There's no metal. So no more slick lathe wheels and that you get from Dancing Bear, anybody else that produces them, because you can't use them on your build. That's a different subcategory because it's not fair to the guys that use the kit wheels. You see where I'm going? You're asking for something that's opening a can of worms that's going to come back and bite us in the ass. When we should just leave it alone and go with the flow, or don't use it. It's your choice, but don't complain about it in the same fact and push for a separate category, because I think that's preposterous. You're asking for something that's going to open up a world of aggravation. It's going to change the way the shows are done. It may close down a lot of shows because they don't want to deal with it. Accept it, guys. It is what it is. It doesn't mean you have to use it, but accept it. Don't look down on it, because it is going to be the wave of the future. It doesn't mean it's going to put AMT out of business. I'm not saying that. It's not going to put Monogram out of business. It's going to keep them in business, because they, as the company, are going to move to what's new technology that is going to speed up the process, give the high quality that everybody's demanding, and can pump out the units with less defects than what they're doing now. That's money. That's saving money, and yet charging more money, so they're making more money. So push, guys. Push all you want for a new category to be opened up in modeling shows for semi 3D printed parts or fully 3D printed kits. All you're doing is opening a window for a lot of aggravation and hurt down the road, because the subcategories for everything. Because then the guy's going to start bitching, well, God, he's on the same table as me. I only used everything that was in a kit, or I kit bashed, and it's all plastic styrene parts. And he's got all his photo etch stuff, and he's got real aluminum wheels, and that's not fair. It's not. I mean, if you're going in the terms of 3D printing, all that aluminum crap on your build is not fair to the guy that just took 20 or 30 different model kits and created a model kit out of it. It's not fair to him if you're going to get that technical. See what I'm saying? Please flood the comments with your comments. Be respectful. Don't be an ass, because I'll delete you, and you'll get a few choice words back from me. These are just my opinions, guys. It's just like at the show, or 3D printed parts, you don't have to buy them. You don't have to buy what I'm selling here. This is a perspective that I've made off of a lot of people's perspective. It's not just my one-sided opinion. This is not just the 6 people I saw in a live chat. This is a congregation from the time 3D printed has come out, what I've seen all over Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. I've compiled all that into this. So it's not just, it's just, that was the icing on the cake, seeing these 6 people discuss what they think about 3D printed builds or parts on a build and the reasoning behind why they feel that way. That's all gives me insight to each way it could go. And I appreciate everybody for doing that and being honest about it. That's tremendous. And talking is the way you work things out. But a few like to throw that, let's make its own category. It's not fair. I can't afford it. I understand that. I can't afford half the crap either. I just don't buy it because I can't afford it. I either try to replicate it best I can myself, and I take my chances when I set it on the table. Win or lose, don't matter. But honestly, here's one for you to really think and let it sink in. If you, let's say you Frankenstein, like I'm doing this Mustang, take out the 3D printed parts, and I only use what I have available in styrene, and I build the same thing. Or I scratch build. I could scratch build these tubes, but it's just as quick as easy as drilling a hole and putting this in there. I save time, get a great look. So I go through all that, and it takes me 6 months to build this thing. I'm super proud of it, and you should be. Even if it took you 2 days, you should be proud of it. And a guy comes along with a similar build, but it's all, machine turned wheels, machine turned nitrous tank, all these braided hoses and machine turned fittings and all this realism detail stuff. And here's mine sitting next to his. Mine don't have a chance in hell. Is that fair? That's what you guys are calling for. That's what you guys are asking for. Inadvertently, you're asking for it and you just don't realize you're doing it. So think about it before you really go to the push of demanding and getting a huge group of people to follow you and demand at a show that it have a separate category, because all you're going to do is you're going to start segregating everything. Because the guy that spent 6 months to a year building his model completely out of plastic, and he puts it on the table next to a guy that spent $300 in machined aluminum parts and other detail parts, and it's the same kit, and set it on the table next to his. Now, is that fair? F no, it's not. Don't you dare think it is. You know, without a shadow of a doubt, you just set yours on the table, and let's say it's a category of Mustang Pro Street. That's the category. And you just set yours in there, and yours is the only one that's fully blown detail like that, has all those parts on it. It's going to freaking win. I mean, if it's of quality to win, you know what I'm saying? It's not guaranteed win. It's, you're going to win. Because none of these other guys have anything closely remote to what you have in yours. Just as clean, painted just as nice as what his is. Nothing changes there. It's just the amount of detail you've added to yours. He did it using plastic. You did it by opening your wallet up. Or if you got a lathe, you turn it yourself, you make them yourself. None of that matters. It's the fact of fairness. So we got to open another category. Machined aluminum parts. Look what the fuck we did. We bitched so much about 3D printing and forced them to open a category so we'd have a fairer odds to win on the table. Now you're competing against guys that weighs probably 3 pounds because of all the metal that's in it. I know what. Let's open another. Well, we don't have to open another category. We have a die-cast category. It's metal. Put it in that category. See what's happening? We're opening a can of worms that we really don't want. And the club guys that put on these shows, they don't want that either. They hear you, and they may feel the same way as you. But they know at the end of the day, it's progress. Progress is always going to over-prevail. It's always going to win. Model companies, what's the most cost-effective method to making these models and keeping us in business is the route we're going to go, because we've been around for 50, 60 years. We want to be around for another 50 or 60. We don't want to die out because we can't keep up. Our molds are so bad, it costs us thousands or millions of dollars, whatever it costs nowadays, to revamp the molds. Don't need that nowadays, guys. All you need is a good CAD designer and a 3D printer and a good computer, and that guy can CAD design that whole freaking kit right there on his little old computer, upload that sumbitch to a flash drive, send it to the printing company. They can start mass producing 3D-wise, producing those kits. Guess what? Now the price is $40 a kit, $50 a kit, because it's all 3D printed. It doesn't cost any more really than the materials. It's the fact of the work that goes into it. You're shooting your foot off to spite your mouth without even knowing it. Do your research. Go back and look. I know hundreds of guys, and I look up to all of them that have the knowledge of models, the existence, how it started, where it started from, who designed it, who did every little thing about a model car up to today's day and time. I look up to those guys. I look up to those 6 people that are on that little tiny live. I look up to each and every one of them. I respect each and every one of them. Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything they say, and vice versa. But be careful what you ask for, because it can come back and bite us in the ass. And if you force model shows to create a category because of the unfair advantage that it has to what you have, you got to start looking back at other unfair advantages. Resin casted, photo etch, spun aluminum parts, pre-manufactured stainless steel or braided lines, A&M fittings. All this crazy stuff, guys, are dying and killing themselves on a daily basis trying to design and create the next big and massive thing to make money at, for it to give you that ultimate detail. It's going to force these guys to start making categories for everything. That's what's fair. Why should I take my kit and put it on the table with a resin casted body? Why should I have to compete against that? In technicality, whatever, the resin cast is probably going to be a neater looking body. It's going to be something you haven't seen in a long time. You're getting it because you don't want to chop the top of another model, your beloved kit, when you can get the thing already done, and all you got to do is clean it up, putty it in a little bit, sand it, prime it, and paint it, and you didn't have to do all the work. So you're sitting on the table, the guy that did cut it, chop it, put it all together, section it, channel it, he did all that, but yet he's competing against somebody that didn't have to do all that. And the guy that didn't have to do all that is probably going to win. Think about it, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm sure there'll be some naysayers, haters. More power to you. It's just my opinion. I'm nobody, guys. I'm just saying, think before you speak. Think before you ask for something. And think before you demand something. Because for every action, there's a reaction. Everything in life, action, reaction. Doesn't matter what you do. There's a reaction for it. Same way with me making this video. It's an action. The reaction is going to be how you guys perceive it, how you feel on it. I will honor everybody's thought and opinion, because everybody's entitled to that. Doesn't mean that you're right. Doesn't mean that I'm right. Doesn't mean Joe Blow is right. Sally Jane Five Fingers is right. Doesn't mean anything. Just means we all have an opinion and we all have beliefs and feelings on things. But in this one thing, and in one part of it only, be careful what you ask for. Because you're opening a kind of a Pandora's box for the next person to come and say, well, it's not fair that you have all that on your build and not mine. It's just this. You guys are the ones that pushed and pushed. You got all these people together and pushed to get 3D printed stuff put over here. And now I got to compete with metal. I got to compete with photo etch. I got to compete with resin cast. Each one of those guys. Truthfully, they all should have their own separate categories, yes. But think about a show. Do you have room for 30 categories? You know how much work goes into a show? And then figuring, first, second, third place for each category. Maybe an honorable mention for that category. how much room you need for all these different builds, it's not always feasible. And you can push and demand it, and one show may open up. Acme, let's say example, the Southern Nationals, they may say, well, yeah, that's a good point, guys. We need to create a separate category just for 3D printed. No matter what your build is, if you got 3D printed part on it, it should go in there. Well, that's still unfair too, because you could be 98% original kit and everything else aftermarket. And because I had these 3D printed pieces on here, it puts it into the 3D printed category. Now, is that fair to the 3D printed build? No, it's not. Nor is it fair to me, because mine has to go in that category now because I got one little 3D printed part on it, or 2, 3, 4, whatever the limit would be. So I'm saying, think about it, guys. You may not like it, and you're entitled not to like it. 100%. You can make 50 videos on it, voicing your opinion. I'll watch every one of them. I can give you the thumbs up. I'll drop a comment. But know what, if you're trying to push for something and sway people to move to get a category open for that, you're creating a Pandora's box, a window that you don't want to open, because when you realize you shouldn't have opened that window and you try to close it, you can't. It's too late now. Damage is done. It's now you're categorized into the way you build, instead of having the freedom of how you want to build and being an artist and creating your own masterpiece. No matter what you're using to create it, whether it's resin, 3D printed, photo etch, machined aluminum, brass, copper, whatever, or Frankensteining the shit out of it from 50 other kits, that's your work of art. It shouldn't be demeanored down to, well, it's got this, it's got that, so it can't go in this category because it's not fair to these guys. No, absolutely not. It's a crapshoot, guys. It's 50-50. Then you take favoritism that's in the shows, all level of the shows. It just outweighed it probably by about 70-30. You be mindful of what you wish for, what you really want to stand behind and do it. Voice your opinion. That's how people learn, communicate. Learning technique. Demanding. I don't think you have a platform on to stand to demand that shows open up a category for 3D printing. Same way as I know at the end of the day, I don't have a grounds to stand on and demand that they open a category for pro touring. I think they should. I'm not the only one that builds them, but there's not enough of us. Out of your 60-year career, you might build one pro touring just because you wanted to build one. It's not like me where I pretty much see the rest of them out of pro touring all the time. Food for thought, guys. Thank you to all my past, present, and future subs. Remember, it's free. While you guys are at it, hit that bell notification. You'll know when my videos come out. I look forward to hearing everybody's take on it. This is really one I've been thinking on a long time. And the other night's hangout kind of just sparked it and kind of put the icing on the cake. So I hope I covered all little aspects of it. Some things maybe you never thought about. And you can take from this and form your own opinion. I guess that's what it's about, is forming your own opinion. When everybody stands united, things change. I don't think we need to stand united on this, guys. It's not that big of a thing. It's something that's going to change the modeling industry. It already is. You guys just don't know about it. You don't see it. But I have. I've had windows of opportunity looking in and seeing how they're doing and talking to people. Other people I know that know people. I'm getting, this secondhand information I don't know for a fact, but the other stuff I do know for a fact. Good point in case. You guys go back and look. When they re-released that dump truck, if you look at the rough draft of that thing, it had a crap ton of 3D printed parts on it. Why is that? Because they can take that 3D printed part and make a mold to use in styrene. They're already doing it, guys, just on smaller levels. And when they come out with something brand new, It's CAD designed because they'll get the rights from Ford or Chevy or whoever. CAD designer will bring it up on the screen, all the important components. You got to weed out the stuff you can't see because a model kit's not a real car. And then they take all those components and they compile it in. Yep. Gets sent out to approval. Yep, looks good. They upload it to a flash drive, or they upload it through the system into the printing room. Some guy will stand there and they'll 3D print this off. It'll go back for, now it's a visual. They can actually see it, hold it. Yeah, looks good, guys. Let's do it. And it'll go from there. Or it'll go back to get changes made. And they'll have to go back into the design and change things or add things. And once it's approved, it goes to the print. It'll go to the guy in the print room. He'll start printing them off. They'll print probably half a dozen of them, and they'll make their molds off of that. As of right now, eventually, they'll be printing the whole thing, because AMT is going to realize all these little independent guys that are making $1,000, $10,000, $100,000 a year printing these models off and selling them to the general public. They're losing business. You're getting in their way. Guess what? They're going to start producing them themselves because they want that money. Think about it. Look forward to your responses. It's Rusty Rotor. I'm out.